Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of this newsletter is going to be complacency. I thought I could just coast. Well, I've got 3 emails I'm going to go through with you today. But before we get into the first one, I've got a quote I wrote I want to share with you. And the quote says, "Human nature is always one towards complacency and laziness when things are going well. When we start to become very successful in our relationships, friendships, career, business, life, etc., it's a challenge for everyone to continue to do the little daily actions that led to success in the first place and that are essential to keeping the momentum of success moving in the right direction. Men in relationships are often guilty of courtship complacency, where they stop dating their wives or girlfriends, going to the gym, maintaining their friendships, etc. Successful salespeople often stop doing the little things that made them successful in the first place by cutting corners during the sales process. When women no longer feel loved and attractive, they often will let their appearance go and no longer make the same effort to remain sexy, desirable, and attractive. In every kind of relationship, we must guard against becoming lazy, taking others for granted, and not making the same level of effort that we did at the beginning of the relationship. The purpose of all relationships is that you go there to give. Once the giving stops, it's simply a matter of time before the relationship dissolves." When I was in real estate, I had a lot of salespeople that worked for me, and when I would have because I would sit down and I do sometimes weekly or monthly meetings with these guys and girls, and if their numbers trailed off from one month to the next, I'd sit down with them and ask them what they had in the pipeline, and they were the same types of leads were always coming in, but if I saw a gradual drop off in their productivity, and especially if it got to the point where they're thinking, "Man, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going on all these sales appointments. It's just not. I'm showing all these houses, or I'm meeting with all these clients. I'm doing consultations. It's not going anywhere." Every single time when I was working with a salesperson, and their productivity dropped off, it was always because they get a little bit of momentum, because in the beginning they're striving to succeed, so they're diligently, religiously following what I was teaching them to do with buyer's consultations and the sales process to win that prospect over so they would feel comfortable enough doing business with them. And then they get a little bit of success, they make a few big deposits with big checks in their bank, and they think they get a little full of themselves, and they stop taking the time that they once used to take in order to make the customer feel comfortable. And so what happens is the rapport wasn't there. And so when it came time to put the deal together or get them to sign on the dotted line, it didn't happen because they didn't take the time to build rapport, or they didn't explain things properly. It's like they just get lazy, they get complacent, they start cutting corners, they think, "Hey, I'm good at this. People just show up, I'm just such an awesome salesperson, they'll want to do business with me." And it's always fundamentals, fundamentals, fundamentals. When you look at any professional sport, it's always about doing the fundamentals. And whether it's a business partner or an intimate relationship or a friendship, at the end of the day, if you don't invest the same amount of time and you're not taking those little actions that led to your success in the first place, it's going to create problems for you. So I've got this first email is obviously from a guy who was following what I was teaching, started doing well, and then he got complacent and things spiraled out of control pretty quickly. He says, "Hey Corey, I've been reading your book and I made the mistake of only reading it 3 times when I got into a 4-month relationship with an amazing woman. Since she dumped me, I've read it 4 times and will continue to hone my skills. But like you said, you never know when the woman of your dreams comes around." Exactly. I say it all the time. 10 to 15 times. That's what it's going to take to really commit that knowledge to memory, because when you don't know this stuff very well, like I got an email that I'm going to answer probably in the next couple of days in a video newsletter that I got in today. Same thing. The guy just hadn't read the book enough times, and he just started making one mistake after another, and he wonders why the girl blew him off. Because especially if you're watching this and you're trying to improve your dating, your relationship, your pickup skills, you've got to overcome that bad behavior. And those tendencies are things that you've literally been emotionally conditioned throughout your whole life up until the point where you came across my videos and articles and my book. And so it's not something that's like an overnight thing. I'm not a quick fix. I'm all about helping you become a more well-rounded and successful individual. But at the end of the day, you've got to participate in your own rescue. You got to learn the fundamentals. And the only way that can happen is by reading the book 10 to 15 times. Because when you get in these situations and you start having some success initially, and if you don't know the fundamentals, then you're going to start making other mistakes. And then especially you get into a fearful place. You don't really know the material very well. You get into a fearful place. Things will spiral out of control really quickly. He says, I was highly successful with this woman through the first 3 months. She did 70% of the work and would text me to say hi daily, and I would only call to set up a date, and we had great sex. Well, I lost my mojo when she introduced me to her family, close friends, and then when I attended her graduate school ceremony with her family. I missed the transition from dating casually to a more serious connection. She was having an emotional connection while I was laying back. Well, the important thing is this is what's really helpful. And like when I work with guys that are married or they're in long-term relationships and they're having a problem, it's usually a big issue of communication. Just because remember, women are natural talkers. On a daily basis, women tend to say about 8,000 words and guys tend to say about 2,000 words. Women talk through their problems to figure out a solution. And a lot of guys often make the mistake of either not listening and not asking or trying to solve the problems when she just wants to talk and have you listen. And so if you're not doing that, it's like you start going out, you start dating a woman, you're all excited about her, it's new, just getting to know her. Then once you're in a relationship, you're meeting her family, you stop doing the little things. Then you went from seeing each other several days a week to just maybe a couple times in the weekend. You're having great sex. You're pretty much content with that. And then all of a sudden what happens is she starts to back away and get colder and colder. And the next thing you know, you're getting friend zoned or she's telling you that she needs her space. It's really important to always, it's a great rule of thumb to be a great listener. And if you're not a great listener now, to become a great listener. And this applies for not just your intimate relationships, but all of your relationships. Let the other person do most of the talking, and you can ask questions, because there's always going to be time for you to be able to tell your story or talk about the things that you want. He says, so then I got frustrated and took a step back and got a little cold. Oh, he says, so she then got frustrated and took a step back and got a little cold. That tells me that she was shutting down to you emotionally because you weren't able to open her up by asking questions and keeping her engaged. It's really important that, at 3 months into the relationship that she's talking and she's sharing about what's going on with her day and just talking about things in general. And if you're no longer as eager to listen to her as you were in the beginning, that's going to come across as that you're really not interested in her. You're just interested in hooking up and getting laid. In other words, getting what you want. It becomes all about you instead of meeting both of your needs. He says, and I made the mistake of calling her a couple of times a week just to say hi and to start to chase a little. Even one of the last conversations when she was busy for the week, and I said, well, I'll miss you. I mean, the bottom line is that one thing I noticed that you mentioned in the beginning of your email is that you said she did 70% of the work. Well, just like I talk about in the book, really, the guy only has to initiate contact for the first usually 2 to 3 dates at the most. And once the woman feels comfortable enough to start reaching out, she'll start calling and texting him more and more. So even at that point, even though she's doing 70% of it and you're doing 30%, it's really not necessary after 3 months. Because feminine energy is all about bonding, connecting, and women just love to talk. And if something happens in their life, who are they going to call? They're going to call their boyfriend, and they're going to want to share, they're going to want to bond and connect because you're her rock, you're her mountain. But if you're still calling and pursuing that much at that point in the relationship, it's just unnecessary. It's too much. And then things start to go sideways, and what happens is that ratio goes from her doing 70%, then it's you're doing 70%, and she's doing 30%, and then it gets to the point where you're doing all of the pursuing, and then that's when the let's just be friends speech or I need space speech tends to come up. So he says the bottom line is over time I did not build the emotional connection properly and got weak by letting her invite me to family functions so early and setting an expectation for her. At the end of the day, the man should always be the leader in the relationship. And a lot of guys are guilty of this. They get into a relationship and they stop asking around on dates and they just start waiting for orders. Where do you need me? What do you want me to do? Where would you like to go? Women don't want to make the decisions. And it's something that happens slowly over time. It's like the analogy of like you drop a frog into a pot of boiling water, he's going to jump right out. But if you put a frog into a pot of warm water and slowly turn up the heat, he'll just stay in there until he boils to death. He says, also in the end, I tried to make up for it then through not being manly, but on her birthday buying flowers and several gifts and then spending the next day helping her and her family with their new deck. Ultimately, when I sensed I was in trouble and her attraction level was going below 5 on a scale of 1 to 10, I froze up and just tried to act friendly on the phone with her, not even trying to set a date. So you, in essence, started to become the therapist and the gay male girlfriend because you're in a fearful state. And so what happens is instead of hanging out, having fun, and hooking up, now you're just a guy she talks to and you become her emotional tampon in essence. You're no longer her lover that wants to see her and plans fun, exciting opportunities for sex to happen. Sure enough, she called me one night and gave me all the compliments in the world and then said, but I have to end this relationship. I can't explain why, because she really couldn't. She didn't understand what had happened and why she wasn't feeling the way she thought she should be feeling. But I was just having this feeling that it must end. She said it's been 4 months and we should be further along and it seems like we're just staying idle and it's never going to happen. He says, this email is about complacency. I got lazy thinking that I had her when she had high interest and got me involved with her family. Her family loved me and so I thought I could just coast. The courtship never ends. There's a chapter in the book about that. And that's where you went wrong. You stopped doing all those little things that made you successful in the beginning. You stopped making dates. You stopped making dates that led to sex. Can you explain further the importance of always dating again and how to keep momentum and handle the family introductions and keeping the emotional aspect building? Well, you definitely did too much pursuing. You stopped being the leader. You stopped opening her up and getting her to talk about life and whatever was going on. And you started spending more time talking on the phone than actually in person. You were no longer the same guy after 3 or 4 months that you were in the beginning, where you were really paying close attention to the detail. And again, there's a pickup phase, there's a dating phase, and there's a relationship phase. And you have to understand all the skills to successfully transition through all those so you don't get dumped. Now, the second email I'm going to get into here, this one is actually from a woman. And she says, Dear Corey, a friend of mine recently sent me a copy of your book, and believe me, I was totally amazed. Being a girl, I very often referred to as being irrational, but after I read the book, I now understand myself better, and I finally know what I do and why I do it. Please help me with my relationship. I've been dating a guy for a little more than 2 years now. The first year of our relationship was perfect. It felt like he's the one I've been waiting for all along. He was loving, kind, caring, like no one before him. He believed in me and my dreams. Remember, the whole purpose of all relationships is you go there to give. You're there to help each other grow and become more, and you were doing that together. And he was focused about his career, and for that first year, we got a huge book and put all of our vacation pictures, wrote taglines, and it was meant to be our book of adventure and travel. We made plans for trekking, skydiving, scuba diving, all the fun adventures I always wanted to do. I was thrilled to have him. He not only wanted to see the world with me, but he was everything I pictured my man to be. He was a good listener and always knew the tiny bit I spoke. But now everything has changed since we came out to his family confirming our plans on marriage. First thing, being non-Catholic, they wanted me to convert for the future of our children. So I took a 1-year-long course and got converted to being a Roman Catholic. I got a Catholic name, had to quit my dream job. That's definitely a mistake. You shouldn't, because part of loving yourself and respecting yourself is also standing up for you and what you want. And yes, just like it talks about being submissive is sexy and attractive, but that doesn't mean that you stop being the interesting woman that you were when he fell in love with you. In essence, you're becoming a doormat. You're letting this guy walk all over you. You've changed your religion, it looks like, or maybe you adopted religion if you weren't religious before, and you quit your job. You shouldn't have given up your dream job for him. If he really loved you and supported you, he would have been, remember, that first year you were working your job and everything was great. But this is part of the problem is that you allowed him to push you around and get him to, and allowed him to change who you were. That's going to make you less desirable, less attractive because you're not standing up to him. He says, I had to quit my dream job that I just started because they couldn't accommodate the leaves in between the retreat and Sunday classes. I don't remember being a Catholic being that big of a deal. I mean, I went to Sunday school and CCD, we used to call it, and all that stuff. First communion and all that. I went to a Catholic high school, but it wasn't the type of thing where it totally took huge amounts of my time. She said, continues on, it hurt to give up so much, but I believed in him and knew we'd be happy together. Or so you thought. But of late, I don't know what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. See, in other words, what's happened is you've kind of lost who you were. You had this person, this amazing individual that you were before you met him, and then in order to please him, in order to do what you thought would make him happy, it's like you started jumping through your butt in essence and changing who you were. So in other words, you did what he wanted, and yet it's not having the effect that you wanted. He hurts me a lot, prefers spending time with his friends than me, neglects me, and the thought of me even going out for a weekend gets him paranoid, where he feels I'll leave him, and after each fight, cries bitterly and states that he'll end up doing something stupid if I ever leave him. Well, that doesn't sound very strong and attractive on his part. So what happened was everything was great for the first year while you were in the honeymoon period, but now this is why I say you got to date for 2, 3, 4 years, because once the honeymoon period is worn off and everybody's basically who the real them is, now you get to see this guy for who he really is. I love him a lot, and I want us to get back to where we were, and yes, it's 2 years now, and he needs to complete certain exams to go back to working with a promotion, and he's still doing that while I have to put up with a crappy job I hate to pay bills. My family has abandoned me because I got converted and say they will take me back only if I leave this part of my life behind. I come from a good, wealthy family, and now all I do is sacrifice on everything I want just to pay rent and bills, and yet for some reason can't muster the courage to walk out. What's happening with me? I always got what I want. I like the job, the haircut, the clothes, and somewhere I have lost the desire to do anything anymore. There are days I'm determined to take charge of my life, and the next day it's gone. Believe me when I say I love him, I really do. Well, I believe you. But at the end of the day, loving him at the expense of losing yourself and making yourself miserable, a relationship is supposed to be a complement to your already complete life. And what happened was, it's like you're kind of a prisoner. You're not even living the life that you really want because you became this person that he said you needed to be in order for him to love you. And the proper way to have handled that is say, I love my job and I'm not giving that up for you, and I'm not going to become a Catholic unless that's something that you really wanted to do. Because that's not attractive. Like I said, you were letting him treat you like a doormat, and now he's kind of lost respect for you because you don't stand up for yourself. You don't act like an equal. Because I've never felt this way before with anyone else, I still believe we can make it through. He has to work towards it, though, and I'm doing my part the best I can. It's high time he puts in an effort to save this relationship. What do you think? Am I wasting my time? Well, if I were you, I would do what you can to get that old job back or a similar job, because you make yourself miserable working a job that you don't like, and you got to get back to being the woman that you were when you first started dating him. And it really sucks that you gave up your family because you really love this guy. That's just not a good way to go. So what I would do if I were you is I'd get back to being the person that you were before you started seeing him, and tell him, I'm not happy in this job. I want to work the job that I really want. And at the end of the day, if he really loves you, he'll support you in that. If he tries to control you and says that, no, I won't accept this, and just say, well, then you don't love me for me. You don't want me to be happy. I'm tired of being miserable. I gave up a lot for you, and most of my time is spent working, and I don't want to work at a job I hate. It's making me miserable, and it's affecting our relationship. And you also need to tell him what it is you want him to start doing. Part of the reason why you're in this situation is if you haven't spoken up for yourself. You've allowed him to get away with one thing after another, and you're just not standing up for yourself. You're in essence living your life according to his expectations. And guess what? Did that make you happy? Obviously not. The purpose of all relationships is you go there to give. You're there to help each other grow and become more. It's about two complete people sharing their completeness. Not one person who feels like they lack something completing the other. Those kind of relationships are based on horse trading. In other words, I'll do this for you if you do this for me. Those will never work in the long run. So let's get into the third and final email. And this guy says, hey Corey, I just want to say you're the fucking man, my friend, and the strongest negotiating tool is walking away and meaning it. My girlfriend recently broke it off with me as I became too clingy, too needy, and just an overall pussy. Upon further introspection, I also realized I always do this with girls I truly want. What the fuck? So in other words, it sounds like you tend to become the pleaser. Just like the woman above, you start changing who you are in order to become what you think the person you're with wants, even though they tell you that's what they want. When somebody asks you to do something that's not aligned with who you are, you have to be who you are and not change that in order to please another person. Because not only are you going to make yourself miserable, but you're going to cause the other person to lose respect for you. When somebody loses respect, they're going to fall out of love with you, whether you're a man or a woman. That's just, you've seen two examples, both sexes, where this has happened. Because if the person really loves you, they're not going to expect you to change. And if you, just like the woman I talked about in the previous email, if you both had stood up for yourselves and what you wanted and been unwilling to compromise, I'm not giving up this job that I love. I'm not giving up this career I love. I'm not going to give up my friends or my passions or going to the gym or where I live. If the person really loves you, they'll accept that. They'll respect you either way. And, the strongest negotiating position is being able to walk away and mean it. And sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes that person will come back and sometimes they won't. But at the end of the day, you can tell from both these examples, it just never leads to a good place when a person stops being who they really are and turns into a pleaser. He continues on, in the beginning it hurt, but as time went on, I began to embody this mantra of, fuck it, you're better than this. I could feel my inner alpha male coming out of hibernation. Within the first week, I met a girl 3 times hotter and 4 years younger. Good for you, dude. She's finishing a pre-med program, but this time I knew what I had to do and how to act. From your texting advice to setting permanent dates, in other words, you must mean definite dates, only using the phone as a tool, etc., I actually felt like my hand was unbeatable. He says it's fucking nuts. She responded just like you said she would, and within 4 days she was asking me if I should bring wine over, followed by her laying in bed begging for sex in the morning after a long night. It's odd, but before your coaching I doubted myself as a man. I own a gym, and being submerged in that lifestyle, I was constantly thinking, I need better abs, I need nicer clothes, that's why I get rejected. But I fucking realized it's all about what's going on in your head. That's what makes panties drop. Fuck me, you're my hero, thanks dude, seriously. Now if the ex comes back, she's getting mind fucked. Well, don't use what you learned from me to manipulate other people. That's not why I teach this stuff. I teach this stuff so you can get to a place of power in your own life so you can have choices and you can have the things that you want. And what I really teach at the end of the day is a perspective change. I teach you a way to approach the world, to approach life, to approach your relationships to approach happiness and getting what you want that is congruent with our true nature. And the beauty of what I teach is you can apply, even if you think I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, if you apply things I teach, you'll see that it works for you. That's why I give all my best stuff away for free, because people can use it for many months and years before they ever decide to buy my book or to make a donation or to book a phone session or to purchase email coaching. That's the beauty of truth. Truth needs no explanation. It's self-evident. It simply is. That's why you don't see any long sales forms on my website or sales pitches or anything like that. It's just like a take it or leave it attitude. Here's the best I got to offer, and if you want my help personally, book a phone session. It's that simple. If you would like to get my help personally, you can go to my website, click the products tab at the top of your screen on any page, and just follow the instructions for booking a paid Skype, phone, or email coaching. I will talk to you soon.